Și o să mut slide-urile de pe tabletă.
Hi, welcome back. I know we're in a post-lunch laze, but our next speaker will get you out of that. Now, in cybersecurity, you can either be a sitting duck or a moving target. Obviously, one has increasingly better chances than the other of actually evading a cyber attack. So our next speaker is going to shake things up a little bit and talk about something else than static networks, because that's all news, and talk about moving target defense and what that means. So we're in for quite a bit of a treat. So please welcome Simona David to the stage for her DefCamp talk.
Hello, and thank you for being here at this presentation about moving target defense. I hope you all hear me fine. It's okay? Perfect. So out of curiosity, who here knows about this strategy? Okay, that's great, because I have chosen this topic because personally, I haven't seen many presentations on moving target defense. So let's start with some details about me. I'm Simona. I love CTFs, especially steganography and OSINT challenges. I love the eBank CTF, so whoever created that, very nice. And I hate reverse engineering tasks. If you do that, I really admire you, and I hope I can be like you someday. If you think that I participate in bug bounty programs, no, I don't. Bounty is the name of my dog, and there are two reasons for that. One, because its presence feels like a reward, and second, because his fur reminds me of the bounty chocolate. You can find me on social media. I only stole the socials here, but you can do your own OSINT. And I'm a security researcher at Orange Services. So what brought me here, and why have I chosen this topic? First of all, because I love it. I feel very fortunate to work in this field of security. I feel it's very new. Every day something new happens. You have to keep up with a lot of things, and you cannot really get bored. And why have I chosen this topic of moving target defense? Well, because I haven't seen many presentations on it, and because it's really new. And I think that our work in this field will make a huge impact. The agenda for today includes an introduction where we will go through the basis of this strategy. We'll follow it up with some examples, and then with our contribution to this strategy, moving target defense in storing secrets. And I hope at the end you will have some questions. So we all know the attackers have the advantage of time. They choose their targets, they choose when to attack, how to attack. They basically are one step ahead, and the victim just waits. We don't know when a company will get hacked. And we don't know how long can the attackers go undetected, and unfortunately, they usually go undetected for a month. So the question is not if a company will get hacked, the question is when it will get hacked. So these attacks can be targeted or untargeted. Targeted if they choose one target and they focus on it and they plan the attack. Untargeted, they just send a bunch of phishing emails and see who falls for that. And I read a study that said that the average time the attackers go undetected is 280 days. So that's about 9 months, which is huge. So in a conventional approach, we will create the perfect security. We will patch everything, we will monitor everything, we will keep everything up to date, we will stay alert, and so on. But what happens with those 0 days, for example? How do you protect against that? So we all know there is no such thing as perfect security, and there will never be, unfortunately. This strategy of moving target defense, the concept was introduced in 2009 at the National Cyber Year Summit, and it came from the idea that since there is no perfect security, our focus should be on building alternative defensible systems. So we said that the attackers have the time advantage. They choose when to attack and so on. So this strategy aims to solve the asymmetry between the attackers and their targets by changing or reducing the attack surface. When we talk about attack surface, we mean everything that can constitute a vulnerability and can be used for an attack. So CVs, IPs and ports, anything that constitutes a pattern. Because attackers thrive on patterns. Let's take, for example, that before our attack surface has three ways, three vulnerabilities, let's say, attack 1, 2, and 3. If we use the moving target defense strategy and we change something in the attack surface such that attack 1 will no longer be feasible for an attacker, attack 2 and 3 will still be there, and maybe the attacker will find a new way, attack 4. So this strategy does not mean to create a perfect system where nothing can be hacked and so on. It's designed to increase the time and the effort for the attacker to have a successful attack. So this strategy comes with 3 questions: what, when, and how. Because we talked about changing something in the attack surface, but what do we change? How do we change it? And when? Do we do it on a timely manner, or do we do it based on an event? Because if we change something too often, we may impact the system's performance. But if we do it too rare, it may have no impact. Because these decisions, these changes, has to be made between T0, which is the attacker's observations, and T1, the attacker's subsequent actions. But what if we choose a certain event? What event will trigger the changes in the attack surface? And how do we make sure that we cover events that are relevant in the attack surface? With these 3 questions of what, when, and how come 3 challenges: the coverage, the unpredictability, and the timeliness. For the coverage, the elements that we choose to change should be covered by the moving target defense strategy. After these changes are made, the system should be unpredictable for an attacker, and these changes should be made between the attacker's observations and his subsequent actions, meaning the attack itself. Some examples of moving target defense include instruction set randomization, NOP insertion, ASLR, IP shuffling, and even honeypots. And this one was a bit surprising for me, but it makes sense to be included because honeypots waste the attacker's time. So they find something that looks vulnerable, they try to exploit it, but they gain nothing out of it. They won't have access to our infrastructure. So we lose their time, exactly what this strategy imposes. And we talked about changes in the attack surface, and this can be made at different levels, like network, application, and software. Let's take ASLR as an example, which is very effective against buffer overflow attacks, some other code injection attacks, because those attacks rely on something that constitutes a pattern, and that is the memory layout. and the ASLR randomizes the addresses of the memory areas associated to a process. Of course, there are ways to bypass ASLR, such those presented here, but the time and the effort for an attacker increase. Now for a more non-technical example and the Romanian one, let's say, the shell game. In Romania, we call it Alba Neagra. And this game involves 3 cups and 1 ball. We place the ball under 1 cup, we shuffle them very quickly, and at the end, the spectators have to point to the cup that holds the ball. Enough movement in the cups will lead to confusion, which is also effective and moving target defense example. Now we're getting closer to our implication in this domain, moving target defense in storing secrets. And in cryptography, this strategy can be used to change the encryption key periodically or switch between multiple crypto systems. And those would be effective ways. But let's think about something that constitutes a pattern, like a database storing secrets, like a database containing username and passwords. When an attacker will gain access to such database, he will try to find out the plain text associated to those hashes. Hopefully there will be hashes. But we all know that some applications limit us in the number of characters a password can have, and that for me is a red flag. Why would you need to limit my characters if you'd hash it? Because a hash will have a fixed character length, so it wouldn't matter for you, but they sometimes do that, so red flag. So if an attacker gets access to a database, they will have to create a pre-computed list of hashed passwords and match those to the username, to the hash of the password from the database they extracted. How does the login process look for a regular user? A user will go to the login form, he will insert his username and password. The backend will compute the hash of the password, and it will validate those values in the database. If the username is found and the hash of the password matches the one stored in the database, the user will get a login successful message. But those values in the database give the attacker a lot of information on the algorithm that was used. Because if the hashes of the passwords have 32 characters, then the attacker knows that MD5 was used. If it has 40 characters, SHA-1 was used. 64, SHA-256, and 128 characters correspond to SHA-512. But what would happen if those patterns won't match? What would happen if we will store every secret in a different format? Then the dictionary attack will be unusable, or at least the cost and effort for the attacker will be bigger. Why? Because if we save, let's say, 2 passwords with 41 characters, 2 passwords with 64 and so on, he will have to create multiple dictionaries. So cost and effort may be bigger than the result in this case. So we thought, why not introduce a new concept, a singularization, which is a sequence of functions that will be different for each entry or each group of entries. So nothing will change for the user, as we can see. The user will still log in using his username and password. Something will change in the backend because we don't have only the hash. We have the hash and the singularization function. And if those values match, the user will get a login successful message. In summary, why use this strategy? We use it to balance the asymmetry between attackers and targets, because attackers have all the time in the world and the targets are just waiting for something to happen. This strategy asks three questions. What should be changed? How should be changed? When? Time, manner, event, manner. And we do these changes because attackers thrive on patterns. And our goal is the cost and effort to be bigger than the results. Here are just some resources that I have used to create this presentation. And now if you have questions. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you so much. We already have a question here. Please keep your hand up so we can see you.
Thank you for your talk. Have you actually used this in real life, or do you know any examples when this moving target defense is used?
We will have a POC. It's not ready yet. The issue with moving target defense, it's hard to create a formal approach to measure its effectiveness. So that's what we're working right now on.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm gonna go here.
Thank you. My question will be actually, do you also consider, for example, in that case, adding a salt also into the hashes as a singularization?
Yeah. The salt can be part of the hash, so no
Okay.
problem with that. The hash can remain the same as before.
Okay. And the question is, if I apply the different operations on the different entries, then this is kind of for me a little bit the gray zone, because I have the feeling like I get a lot of obscurity into the system, and I just do not want to, shift to the security through obscurity. How do you differentiate on that level?
I don't feel it's very obscure because you will have to know what functions were used and for each group of entries. So for you, it will be very clear. The obscurity will be on the attacker side because he will have to do multiple computations to find out the plain text. So yeah, it can be just security by obscurity, but if you use the right functions, it will be also effective. So not only obscure.
Hello, here. Thank you for the presentation. My question is, because this talk focused mostly on the example focused on the credential storage part, right? But how do you change the attack surface of a larger system, considering that attackers, once they get into a corporate network, they start scanning and you have a system that has software, has some server application running on it. Obviously, you cannot change the server application. You cannot change the port of that application because it has a predefined port. You cannot change the software in order to have different vulnerabilities or not the same vulnerabilities. You still have to patch it. So while I understand in the context of credential storage or hashes in particular, you can introduce some random aspects like assault and things like that. How do you do it for a full system? Can you give some examples? Thank you.
Some examples go from adding honeypots, for example, to waste their time. I mean, it really depends on your approach and your system's performance and so on. What are you trying to protect? So if you will choose some changes that are made too often and it will impact the system, that's not okay. So it's just I would say it's based on your infrastructure and the testing you can do on that infrastructure. So if you cannot change things like ports and IPs, then maybe at the software level, stuff like ASLR, for example, or yeah, stuff like that. I think it really depends and can't be a generic question, answer.